Hello everyone and welcome to another Top 5 Records video. Today I'm going to rank all the studio albums of Black Sabbath featuring their original vocalist, Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne passed away earlier this year, and I think it's good to remember the beautiful, true quality of this band. The band that originated the heavy metal genre, and even after originating it, also started a lot of sub-genres because they kept developing. Their history and their body of work is so incredibly impressive. It's even tough to behold how many great records they have. But as with every ranking, I have to start with the lowest. So without further ado, I'm gonna kick off the position of number 9. And number 9, I would love to hold up a record because I usually do that in videos. But the record Technical Ecstasy is not one of the records that I have bought, and I am not going to buy it. I have a lot of records, but I do not want to be a completist to have records for the sake of having them, because I've listened to this record digitally several times and I'm just not getting hooked. When the record was being released, Tony Iommi said the following: "Some people may have heard the band in 1970 and be thinking, oh, not them again. But if they heard us now, they probably might like us." That is not really what happened with this record. It sounds completely different from anything you've heard from Black Sabbath. I'm going to put in another quote, and this one by Geezer Butler, the bass player and lyricist. "It's not like now," he said in an interview with Uncut in 2014. "If you're a heavy metal band, you put out a heavy metal album. Back then, you had to at least try to be modern and keep up. Punk was massive, and we felt that our time had come and gone." And that is something you notice with a lot of the artists, even Queen, and they were very popular during the glam rock era. At the time of Technical Ecstasy, Queen was working on a record called News of the World, and they were even thinking we should tone down the amount of takes because punk is coming, and everybody was afraid of punk and a hatred to the old records. So they started experimenting. They started recording in Miami, and as a matter of fact, a lot of people said that the production went pretty relaxed, except for Tony Iommi, who stated, "We recorded the album in Miami and nobody would take responsibility for the production. No one wanted to bring in an outside person for help, and no one wanted the whole band to produce it. So they left it all to me." What were the rest of the band members doing? They were hanging around the pool in Miami, enjoying the sun. This resulted in a record with some tracks being un-Sabbath-like, not only in sound, because I enjoy a good sound experiment, just also tone-wise and authenticity-wise and quality-wise. For example, the song "It's Alright," I would nominate for the worst Black Sabbath track that I've heard. There's another song, "She's Gone," which is completely not working. It is a little bit, it feels strange that you're hearing Black Sabbath, such a unique, authentic band, produce actual kitsch. There is the most horrendous keyboard here. At number 9, Technical Ecstasy. At number 8, and actually, I don't have this record yet because the last couple of months, it's very tough to find any Ozzy Osbourne record because sales went up after he passed away. I've been looking for this record because I think this one is not bad. At number 8, Never Say Die. And Never Say Die was made during a period of a lot of tensions. Both Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne, they wanted to reunite because Ozzy Osbourne had left after the Technical Ecstasy tour. But the tensions, although they got together again, the tensions remained. The record was recorded in Toronto, and the location was part of the tensions. They had to rehearse in a very cold cinema, in which it was freezing cold. It was winter in Toronto, and the temperatures then are just most horrible. Recording took place at night. So there was lots of discomfort there. Also, Ozzy Osbourne was somehow not feeling it, and the band members had a hard time working with him. He rejected a lot of Geezer Butler's lyrics, so Geezer Butler had to rewrite them at the last minute. He didn't want to record any songs that they had written during the period with their other singer, because in the time Ozzy was away, they had a different vocalist, and Ozzy did not want to be part of that at all. So he just refused to sing certain songs, which led to, for example, the song Swingin' the Chain, which was sung by drummer Bill Ward, and this is completely awkward. That's not a good track. But is it a bad album? As I said earlier, I don't think it's a bad album. I think it's not metal anymore. And Osbourne complained, for example, in his biography years later, that they were losing touch and so on. But I hear a different touch. I hear Black Sabbath connecting with a certain rock and roll roots. And I think that is interesting. Not all songs are great, and they are a shadow of what they were. But what they were is fantastic. And this is a different angle. Is it a good album? No, it's not a good album, but it's fair enough. I think this could at least be qualified as okay. So further down the list, it's all up from here. At number 7, the record 13. This was the big reunion, and I remember when this came out. Obviously, I wasn't that young anymore. It's about 12 years ago, and everybody was just talking about this. Ozzy Osbourne recorded a record again with Black Sabbath. It's even produced by Rick Rubin. Now, I would also put off on the record if I had it. I don't have it because this record suffers from the loudness war, so I'm actually waiting until we get a remix, so we get a more dynamic version of this, because it's also expensive, you know. But this record, it's really good, and I was so surprised to hear it back in 2013 when this came out. One thing though, the reunion is not fully complete. There's no Bill Ward. At the initial start of the recordings, he was there because they started the recording in 2001. But Ozzy Osbourne had to leave because he had to finish some work on a solo album, and then it took years and years and years before they got together, and they had to sign new contracts. And then Bill Ward took a look at his contract and said, nope, it's not enough money. So even publicly, and then the band started to renegotiate, and then after a while, Bill Ward got another offer, another contract, and he said, nope again. Now, they recorded without Bill Ward, they toured without Bill Ward. Nevertheless, this album is spectacular. With their two most brilliant songs, God is Dead and End of the Beginning. I mean, what a way to open a comeback. I went to their tour in 2013, and when they played songs of this album, and when they played especially those two songs, you could hear the entire audience was just completely into it. There was madness going on. That show and that record, what a way to return. And what a great album. At number 7, 13 from 2013. At number 6, finally I can hold up pressings again. At number 6, Sabotage from 1975. This is their 6th studio album. The title Sabotage actually came because they were in a legal battle during the recording of this record. They were battling their former manager, and the stress of those lawsuits and the 8 months of filing lawsuits, negotiating, it just filled the atmosphere of this record. They were receiving notes from the other attorneys on their mixing desk. So it was completely filled with lawsuit, and you do not want that to involve your creative process. It was recorded in London, and this is a beautiful record with heavy and powerful songs. Opening with Hole in the Sky. It's got The Writ. It's got Megalomania. It's one of those great Sabbath moments. Dark, beautiful. Oh yeah, and Rolling Stone even said it might be their best album ever. Well, if Rolling Stone says that. So at number 6, Sabotage. At number 5, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Okay. The writing of this record started in Los Angeles, straight after the Volume 4 tour. But there were some issues. Again, but these issues were different. They were tired of the touring, and there were some problems with certain substances. Ozzy Osbourne recalls the story of them playing the Hollywood Bowl, and Tony Iommi, he literally collapsed during that Hollywood Bowl show because he had been awake for a couple of days. And that's never a good idea. And not only did he fell, he also fell into a writer's block. Now, as everything in Black Sabbath, at least the start of the songs, concentrated so heavily on Tony Iommi, nothing really happened. So while they were trying to write in LA, they moved. They moved to Clearwell Castle in the Forest of Dean. And luckily, somehow, changing scenes, a little bit of rest, Tony Iommi came out of his writer's block. And the first riff he wrote was Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. One of the mightiest, most powerful, gorgeous riffs ever to be written on an electric guitar. That song, such an epic construction. I think the band was in such an incredible state here. Ozzy Osbourne's vocals there with the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. What more can you do? Living just for dying, dying just for you. Yeah. I did that on the actual height in my Ozzy Osbourne tribute video, but then my microphone distorted, so I'm doing it an octave lower and a little bit less volume. I just think if you listen to the way he does that, just the melody of the vocal is of course stunning, and but the high piercedness of what Osbourne is doing there, the beautiful change in riffs, so many great melodies just packed in one song, and there are so many great other songs. Sabracadabra, Killing Yourself to Live. Whew, these are heavy metal classics. This is such an incredible record. I truly, truly love it. Now, Ozzy Osbourne later on in his biography said that Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was the beginning of the end, because of the indulgence in certain stuff that was bad for you. And he said that afterwards, things just started to worsen, although they still made the beautiful Sabotage. But this is, and actually the top 5 here, that is so hard to communicate to people who are not Black Sabbath or even heavy metal fans. The top 5 of Black Sabbath records. I'm not going to say I'm gonna change the order, but it is like you're talking about 5 records by the same band who were on a sheer point of perfection and were freely discovering new territories. Ranking these 5 records is like ranking the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's, Abbey Road, White Album, Rubber Soul, Revolver. It's that brilliant. Like Kraftwerk's Autobahn, The Man-Mensch Machine, Computerwelt, Radioactiviteit, and Trans-Europa Express. You know, every record is just this new discovery of a genre they have been inventing. So the next 5 are just all of pure perfection, including this one, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. And at number 4, Black Sabbath Volume 4. And this is the first album that was actually produced by Black Sabbath under the name Black Sabbath, but actually done by Tony Iommi, because the rest was not really producing. It was recorded in Los Angeles, and it was, again, as seems to be a recurring theme here with Black Sabbath, plagued with problems, especially with regards to a certain element that they were consuming very often, which is very bad for your health. So bad advice here. In his autobiography, I Am Ozzy, Osbourne speaks at length about the sessions here. He said, in spite of, after he passed away, I can't do the imitation. In spite of arsing around, how do you say that? Arsing. In spite of arsing around, musically, those few weeks in Bel Air were the strongest we'd ever been. And as a band, they were in such spectacular new territories. If you take a look at the track list here, it's just stunning. Here we have it. Opening with Wheels of Confusion. I mean, that's one badass way to open an album. Then you get Tomorrow's Dream. Then the third song, one of the most beautiful ballads of the 70s. And it's pretty popular now again because it's done by Youngblood on the Ozzy Osbourne Goodbye show. Youngblood does a great job. But when you listen to the original, Changes. Oh, I mean, it used to be somewhat of a controversial song among Sabbath fans because ballad, isn't this too sweethearted? But they just proved for me that they were going into new territory, doing incredible stuff. And what a beautiful ballad. Supernaut's on here. I believe John Bonham wanted to jam with them during the recording of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath because he was such a big fan of Supernaut. I guess he was a fan of more songs. I mean, how could he not be? But he noticed especially Supernaut. Snowblind. I mean, what a powerhouse. This is a record that shows so much stunning diversity. It's actually maddening that they just did this as their 4th album while they were on a streak of reinventing themselves. What a masterpiece. At number 4, Volume 4. At number 3, and I'm not just doing a reverse chronological order. I'm really looking at it quality-wise, or how much do you love it, but it's so tough. These records are so good. At number 3, Master of Reality from 1971, their 3rd studio album. And this is actually seen as the foundation for stoner rock and sludge metal. This is also the first album in which, perhaps most noticeable, their sound changed. Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler, they toned down how do I say this in English? Their guitars and the bass guitar. Toned down in the sense of that tuning down. That's the right word. Tuning down. It had to do with the fact that Tony Iommi, he had an accident in the factory, so he was missing the tops of, I believe, 2 fingers. And there was a lot of pressure on his fingers with the old song. So we thought, you know what if we tune a little bit down? That might work, so there's less tension on the strings, so less tension on the fingers. This might work. And the sound changed. The sound became deeper and darker, and they enjoyed it. So they started fooling around with that, and they tuned even further down. So it was less high for Ozzy Osbourne, but when he heard them going down, he just started singing higher and higher. So this created this beautiful diversity in sound of the bass and the guitar getting lower and lower and heavier and more perhaps rancid, dirty, and Ozzy Osbourne going way up, and that is just such a stunning sound here. with songs like Sweet Leaf. What a beautiful song. Children of the Grave. That riff, the vibe, so much energy. Orchid is a good instrumental. Lord of this World. Solitude, Into the Void. What a masterpiece of music. Even if you're not a heavy metal fan, you should try this out because it will blow your mind. At number 3, Master of Reality. At number 2, I'm taking a sip of my coffee. At number 2, the self-titled record Black Sabbath, with the mystery cover of the woman nobody knows about who she was, where she's now. She mysteriously disappeared. Is it even a woman? Yeah, it is a woman. I can see it close. She's a woman, although you're never sure, of course. The first album, and the idea behind this, also production-wise, is basically they started performing in the studios the songs that they played on stage. Simple, direct, sound-wise. Nevertheless, this is the moment the idea of rock and roll or blues rock as an influence disappeared. A definite new 100% fresh genre existed. Heavy metal. There's a dark tone. The lyrics may be frightening. I never understood the element of frightening. I read stories and biographies about Black Sabbath, and I heard people talk about this record, for example, being frightening back in the days. And I always thought, yeah, of course, people weren't used to stuff. And then I heard a good pressing. This is a first Dutch pressing, and there's a beautiful recent Rhino High Fidelity reissue. I have a video about that on my channel. You can find it at the links below. And just the detail in the voice that the record holds, and the atmosphere of the opening track, and the dark atmosphere, and that Ozzy Osbourne sings as if he has to confront you with this, not as if he's enjoying himself, making you afraid. No, he has to. It's like an apocalypse is coming, and he has to share this with you. I understand why people were frightened, because it genuinely is a frightening record. At a time in which this was so new, I mean, it still has that element of fright. But back then, I can really understand if you're afraid of cults or something like that, that this had the most scary impact. Looking at the track list, you get the title track, Black Sabbath, great song. The Wizard, Behind the Wall of Sleep, N.I.B., that's a really spectacular song. And Warning, yeah, there are more songs. This is the Dutch pressing. It has Evil Woman, Don't Play Your Games With Me, Sleeping Village. So there's actually a different track list on this one than on the American one, I believe. And the Rhino High Fidelity follows the American track list. Both are just stunning experiences because this is something new, something fresh, something exciting. At number 2, Black Sabbath's self-titled Black Sabbath. And at number 1, obviously, Paranoid. Recorded in the same year as their self-titled record. And the production idea behind this was basically the same. Perform songs I did live. As a matter of fact, some songs were just written or played as live jams on stage, and then they took it to the studio. For example, and that's the bizarre thing here. This is one of the records that shaped the world of music, and they were at such a high level and they had such a visionary mind, and were playing in such gorgeous territories that the song War Pigs was this live jam, basically, and then titled Walpurgis back then, which I believe is Spanish or so for werewolf. I had some DVDs of a Paul Naschy werewolf film called Il Ritorno del Walpurgis. It's the return of the, I believe it's the return of the werewolf. So I believe Walpurgis is some sort of werewolf. But it changed into War Pigs because the lyrics changed. And then it became one of the most incredible, world-changing songs, one of the biggest tunes in hard rock, heavy metal. It was a stage improvisation, even more so. The title track, Paranoid. They had recorded a bunch of songs and they found out the record doesn't have enough tracks. We gotta add another song. So Tony Iommi said that in between 20 and 25 minutes, they wrote the song Paranoid. The biggest anthem in the world of heavy metal was written in 20-25 minutes. It's astonishing how easy this record may seem or may feel, but when you take a look at the track list with songs like War Pigs, Paranoid, Planet Caravan with Ozzy Osbourne's voice going through a Leslie speaker, which makes the most gorgeous sound really. And then the end of side A, after having War Pigs, Paranoid and Planet Caravan, you get Iron Man. What a first side. And side B is nothing worse. Electric Funeral, Hand of Doom, Red Salad and Fairies Wear Boots. Wow. What a stunner. At number 1 and ranking all the Black Sabbath albums, Paranoid. But again, the last 5 are all of the same gorgeous level. Different angles within a genre they just created. What a career. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.